David Chappelle, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great.
Great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming out here. This is a big thrill for me because I have educated myself a great deal about you and your life. And it's nothing but respect that I have generated for you. And I'm thrilled to be here tonight. And you know what else? I'll let you talk in a minute.
All right.
27 years ago, almost 27 years ago, we met for the first time.
On your show?
On my show.
Yes. And ironically, the first time I was supposed to do your show, I didn't have a suit. I wore jeans and a T-shirt. So I got bumped.
Really? There was a dress code?
Yeah, but that's why I got a suit on tonight. I said, I'll never sit in front of David Letterman again.
You get bumped from this.
Yeah, I ain't get.
What was your life 27 years ago?
So I must have been around 19. I had been out of high school for a year and a half. I was living in New York City. Being on your show at that time was the pinnacle for a comedian. If you had a Letterman set, there was nothing bigger. And I got one.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the program Dave Chappelle. Dave!
Do you remember how your set went that night?
Good enough. Television's a different animal. I still consider myself like a real nightclub comedian. Now I'm a nightclub comic that does the trick on television, but the atmosphere, that thing that I developed myself in was a lot more forgiving than what television was and is.
I'm like 100 years old. So when I started out doing comedy, it was you had to have a hunk, 5 minutes to get on the Tonight Show. And now it's completely different. Everybody has a deal for hour specials. First of all, the idea of assembling that kind of material I find crushing. But you are so prolific. How many hours do you have now on platforms on this planet?
I know when I quit my show, Chappelle's show, I went to San Francisco a lot, the Bay Area, and I recorded all my sets, audio recorded them. Literally probably hundreds of hours of tape. Some of that stuff made its way into the work that I'm doing now, but somehow I had the foresight to know that was a special time in my artistic development, and I have a record of it. You know, like at that time, I had thought that I ruined my career.
When you left the TV show?
Yeah, I'd never seen it work out before like that.
Because you get out of line, it may be, well, too bad.
Yeah.
You got other people ahead of you.
That's the end of it.
Yeah.
And I think when the specter of making it left the room, and I was just doing it literally just for my livelihood and because I loved doing it, it made me a better comedian. It made me a more courageous comedian.
You leaving the show, you know this because there is an historical video and print documentary of you going from outlet to outlet to outlet to outlet, answering the question, well, what's the matter with you? You left a huge, what is the deal? They would fill in the blanks for you because they were so desperate. And the longer I ruminated on this, the better this thing sounded to me because what bigger, cool, badass thing to do than just say, good night, everybody, and then adios. I mean, how cool is that?
Well, initially it was terrible.
Yeah. Were you scared? You must have been scared crazy.
Of course, I was terrified. And there were, legal issues around the partner show like that. And, clearly I didn't have the money that I thought I might need to get through a decision like that. So in the beginning, it was like anything. You got to face a lot of your fears. Some I faced better than others, but I was determined. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to make a choice like that and then just be a parable of what not to do.
From this perspective, don't you look back on it and think, it's kind of cool?
Oh my God, yeah. Now, David Letterman's in Ohio, but before it worked out, it was really scary, man. I don't know what you guys think happens when you quit a successful show like this. I'll tell you what doesn't happen. They don't go, hey, well, good luck with your future endeavors. That's not what happens. It was cold out there.
I kept reading over and over again when you left your show, There was an episode described, and it was never elucidated, that somebody on the crew laughed at a sketch you did, and you thought the laughter was on the wrong side of the humor. Do you recall what that was?
Oh, yeah, I remember. It just raised an interesting question to me, which I was already wrestling with in the first place. You know, Dave, I like to go hard in the paint. At that time, especially in my career, I always had the feeling it could end any minute, so I err on the side of excess. And there's instances where you go too far. You're playing with powerful shit, doing jokes about racism and this ism and that ism. And to me, I looked at it as an occupational hazard, but I also realized that I was bigger than I was comfortable with. I didn't trust the circumstances of the being that big or whatever.
Do you remember what the person was laughing at that you felt you diagnosed as being, oh, this is wrong?
Yeah, but more vividly, I just remember the feeling, the way it made me feel. Very happy that I did what I did.
Yeah.
You know, in hindsight, it was a very, very, very formative event, or a sequence of events. It wasn't any one part of it. But if I had finished the show feeling the way that I felt, I would never been the same. My father's main thing, he would never tell me what to do, which you got to think is a strange way to grow up. His thing was you have to be able to make decisions, which is a real counterintuitive way. And sometimes I used to think it was to my detriment. But the older I get, I understand why he raised me that way. He might help me sort through the pieces, but he wouldn't really put the puzzle together.
Did he tell you he loved you?
All the time.
All the time.
In fact, yeah, that's the thing in our family. I don't think I ever leave my children's presence without letting them know I love them. Because I never know what's going to happen anyway. So, you know, it's the most important thing, I think, for stability is you never see a kid who was abused with that kind of confidence. Or a kid who was neglected with that kind of confidence. Just sometimes knowing that somebody cares inspires you and empowers you to be courageous.
Tell me, where are we, by the way?
We are on the outskirts of lovely Yellow Springs, Ohio.
Reading a little bit about Yellow Springs, there is a unique association with this community and slavery. The relationship was not straightforward, but yet it was there, and it seemed to be viable in helping men and women leave slavery. Do you know a little bit about that and the history of this city?
Sure. Ohio was an abolitionist state, so slavery was never legal here in the state of Ohio. However, we didn't have suffrage either, so freedom was illegal and slavery was illegal for black people. The Ohio River was the line. Over in Kentucky, they was slaving away. You know, a lot of the people here were Quakers and Mennonites and stuff like that. They were opposed to slavery. And this town became an abolitionist town. Some of the older houses, they say, have passages in them where slaves used to hide. So it's a big part of our local history. In fact, traditionally, this year because of COVID, it didn't happen, but traditionally on the 4th of July, we go to a place, watch the fireworks, called Gaunt Park. Gaunt Park was donated to this town by an African-American named Wheeling Gaunt, who was a slave, whose quote-unquote master would allow him to hire his own time out. So when he was done working in the fields, he would go work for another plantation, and they'd pay him. And eventually he was able to buy his freedom. Brought his entire family's freedom. I think some 5 people. Became a landowner here, was very instrumental in the historical black university Wilberforce up the street. And when he died, he donated the park to the village of Yellow Springs. It's one of my favorite parts of the town.
That's remarkable. So I'm reading about you being Muslim. When did you become Muslim?
When I was 17.
What were the circumstances?
I don't know, it was like 17. I was living in Washington, and there was a pizza shop across from my house. And it was like all these Muslim dudes that worked in there. And I used to go in there and crack jokes. And I was a naturally curious guy, and I would ask him questions about his religion. And the guy was so passionate about it, it was very compelling. I like the perspective of it, and I think these things informed my decision that I wanted to have a meaningful life, a spiritual life, not just what my hands can hold, but I felt like I've always had this notion that was to mean something. In any relationship, especially citizen to its country, trust is everything. And I think we do have a crisis of a lack of trust in our country with good reason. And what's scary is it seems as though people don't trust each other. It does not speak well for our national character. that people hoarded toilet paper and bullets in the beginning of the pandemic. But here, I knew people who walked past a roll of toilet paper because they knew they had a roll at home. So it was on our shelves longer than it was in other places. So I'm trying to tell you, community is everything, and fostering trust amongst each other, that's everything. Whatever you guys argue about the specifics, we got to trust that there'll be a livable level of decency.
A livable level of decency. That's nirvana right there. But I worry about just what's the world going to be? Is it going to be tanks in the street, for God's sakes? Is it a civil war again? Or am I thinking too much about this? Because you think that there will be a livable level of decency.
Well, I believe that God is in control, no matter what I worry about. That only my efforts are my own, and the results have nothing to do with me. That I do what I think is best, but I just don't know what's best, because I'm just a guy. But I trust that this creation has a purpose. It proves that something perfect exists. We have to believe in something.
Right.
Otherwise, why would you continue?
But largely, the awareness that these things are out of my control. You find that comforting?
I do find it comforting. I can only do what I intend to do. If I even am that thoughtful about what I'm doing. It's a terrible thing to say publicly, but I'm saying it. I love being famous.
Good for you.
No, I really I love it. I don't like being a celebrity, but I like being famous.
Well, differentiate this for us.
Celebrity's a road. Celebrity is when you walk down a red carpet and they ask you what you're wearing. Or if you're a lady, you stick your toe out when they take your pictures. That kind of shit.
You don't do that.
No, I don't do any of stuff. I don't even do interviews. If it wasn't like you, I wouldn't even want to say anything to anybody about what I'm doing because it's so gut-wrenching to me. Any job that makes you depend on the approval of others for your livelihood, it's a crazy job. Most people don't have to worry about whether they're liked or not. And for us, this is a consideration. The more you invest into yourself as a celebrity, the less of yourself you get to own.